people think that it really is like.
Well, let's get a definition from each of our guests. How do you define poor?
Yeah, I'm not sure I exactly understand the caller's question. I would define poverty as someone who, in a rural area, has a family income of less than $10,000, and in a city has a family income of less than $15,000.
Well, actually, that would have been very wealthy for the standard that I grew up in. And Mr. Hitchens particularly, when he said he didn't feel that they could grow up to be a good parent, etc., I want to say that it has nothing to do with money. It only has to do with character. And fortunately, even though if you took my childhood and put it on the scale, it would have met the very worst circumstances. But I had a mother who was very bright and who had character. And those are the concepts, more than money, that we really need.
The poor are different from us, as Scott Fitzgerald famously said. They have less money. I don't think you can, in fact, put a figure on it, because the definition must, I think, mean that if you're poor, it means you are not sure when your next meal is going to be, and you're not certain that you know where you're going to sleep, or you're not secure in your habitation. I think that's to be absolutely poor. Is to not have any confidence in the availability of the bare necessities. Of course it is true, as the lady says, for herself and by implication for others, that many people have triumphed over upbringings of that kind, and we know their stories. We partly know them, of course, because they're the survivors. There are people who didn't make it. And my point about people later on becoming poor parents, to use poor in another way, ma'am, was actually directed to what David Frum was saying about the relationship between poverty, malnutrition, and intelligence. I mean, it's been shown that children who are badly malnourished in their early days will have lower IQs, for example. So that doesn't, of course, a low IQ doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to be a good parent, but you know what I mean. The odds tend to lengthen at about that point.
Time to get in a couple more calls. Let's go to Buffalo first. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen. A comment and a question. The comment relates to Mr. Frum and the Canadian healthcare system. I live up here in Buffalo, and it's about a 5-minute drive from Canada. And I would challenge Mr. Frum to come up with the name of one major Canadian politician who has suggested politically that they abandon the national health care system that he condemns so much for anything that we have down here. But my real question is this, perhaps for both gentlemen. Why does Mr. Clinton, who now has been reelected for 4 more years, can't run again, why can't he operate from the gut instead of continuing to have his finger up to the political wind to see which way it's blowing?
Well, I'll leave that second question to Christopher Hitchens, who probably has keener insights than I into the president's psychology. As to the first, why has no Canadian politician called for the abandonment of a system that is demonstrably now failing? Why does no American politician acknowledge that Social Security is in danger of going bankrupt? I mean, there are things that, the mere fact that something is true doesn't mean that it is safe politically to say. And in Canada, the 2 things. One is that the problems of the healthcare system have been intensifying over the past half-dozen years. It actually did work, although the inevitability of some kind of crisis was there from the beginning. It worked reasonably well until 6 or 7 years ago. It's begun to go wrong since then. And second, that for Canadians, of course, as the caller in Buffalo will know, the healthcare system has significance way, way beyond whether it's doing a good job or not. It's an important touchstone of national identity. And at this point, to acknowledge in Canada that the healthcare system is false, it is the equivalent in the United States of acknowledging that the flag could be more beautiful. It's just something you don't say.
Give you a chance for one more comment. You mentioned, we've been talking about the president. You mentioned soft money earlier and campaign. One story we didn't get to bring up, but we'll bring up real quick here, is the White House is considering whether to open fundraisers attended by the president to the news media as a response to the public furor over questionable campaign money. They talk about potential...
How much do they have to pay to attend?
Well, they talk about potential problems with the dynamics of those meetings.
Well, that drives me wild with annoyance, because during the actual election campaign, when it would have been worth knowing and worth attending. I couldn't even get the Democratic National Committee to tell me which fundraisers the president had already attended. They considered that to be their private business, as indeed it was. But if I'd rung up and offered them money, they would have given me a straight answer and perhaps an invitation. But if I didn't have any money, they weren't interested. The franchising of politics and the sort of people to whom it's been franchised, like these real sweeties in Indonesia, is the scandal of the moment. And the scandal, as my friend Mike Kinsley once put it so well in Washington, is never what's illegal. The scandal is what's legal.
Last thought?
I am amused by the, I mean, there's the Dick Morris rule again. We asked, did he make a comeback? There it is. You issue your pro forma apology and then refuse ever again to acknowledge that anything went wrong. And then change the subject and say what we now need, of course, is a vast new regulatory statute.
It's always great to hear from both of you, David Frum from the Manhattan Institute and Christopher Hitchens of Vanity Fair. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
And we'll be back in a couple minutes.